This is Luke Paulson, the Catholic Conservative, and welcome to the news of the week for October 11th, 2025. And if you enjoy these videos, do not forget to like, comment, and most importantly, subscribe for more. An illegal superintendent. I have met a few superintendents over the years. Usually they are hired from within the district, or brought in from another district from whence they have stellar credentials. Apparently, this is not the case in Iowa, as an illegal actually became the superintendent in Des Moines. Ian Andre Roberts likely committed multiple crimes related to fraud. These may include Social Security fraud, falsifying educational credentials, falsifying job history, and potentially mail or wire fraud. These charges are not to be taken lightly. If someone can fake these credentials and get into a school, how many people who have committed unmentionable crimes could have gotten in? Furthermore, if he was able to fake this, how many other illegals have also been able to falsify these records? Additionally, if you think that he was able to commit all of this fraud and was not able to fake something to be able to vote as well,
I got some
Now, while we are on the topic of faking things, I would briefly like to talk about artificial intelligence. AI is a tool. I know that title is a bit on the nose and a bit obvious, but it does bear repeating. I recently had a conversation with a colleague on AI. He asked an AI chatbot directly if it was changing passages from the good book. According to him, the program admitted to doing this. I cannot speak for how long ago this was, what else was said, or if the person's account manipulated the results. But it does make sense. For reference, this was the AI program through Meta, which owns Facebook. As such, there is a lot of bias. If we give him the benefit of the doubt, this is a problem. My fellow ministers of the Word and I often rely on AI to help us write sermons and speeches. While I read through what it generates, not everyone does. After all, when was the last time that you read the terms and conditions before agreeing to them? Now I suggest using Gab AI for all of your AI needs. While this is not sponsored by them, they do a good job. While this was not much in the way of news, we need to be cautious with any new technology. Now I would like to focus on something that the Catholic Church is doing that is sadly based on a lot of misinformation. Donations to Hamas. There are a lot of oppressed groups out there in the world. Christians in India, China, Vietnam, and North Korea cannot always worship freely regardless of denomination. President Trump was right. Christians are the most persecuted group around the world. Christianity is based on the worldview that we are subject to God, but we also respect the laws of where we live, the latter of which is not found in Islam. Early on, I was going to be a Catholic priest, thus my initial username, which is still reflected in my social media accounts. However, there were some things that I just could not stand behind. Recently, bishops across America through Catholic Relief Services, the same organization that is accused of helping the illegals enter America, are collecting for the people of Gaza. At first glance, this is a good thing, but not once you consider the facts. We know that Israel was already giving aid to the region even when there were still American and Israeli hostages. But Hamas is stealing the aid despite their people supposedly starving. Sadly, any donation to Gaza is a donation to Hamas, and Hamas missile launchers in schools and hospitals. Now, staying on the topic of the Catholic Church, let us see what Pope Leo has to say. The Pope condemns a wall. But first, Pope Francis was infamous for sticking his nose where it did not belong. Pope Leo XIV recently made comments about the border wall with Mexico. He related this to the pro-life stance. For reasons. My criticism of him is the same as my criticism of Pope Francis. Both of them live in a walled city with border laws that are even more strict than in America. It is true. Look it up. No one gets in without papal approval. You would not find the president approving each entry into America, or even a mayor choosing every entry into his city. Now it seems that he might have somewhat learned his lesson. He refused to comment on President Trump sending troops into America. The pontiff stated in part that he should not get involved with politics. Was this someone whispering in his ear not to get involved, or did he see the writing on the wall?
Only Poppins would know.
Either way, while some foreigners are getting in, no questions asked, some foreigners are also getting money. Because this is how you discourage people from breaking in. Illegals getting welfare. $92.8 billion amongst 1.4 million illegals. is over $65,000 per illegal, or roughly $66,285.71 on average. That is more than enough money to send these people back to whatever country they came from and in first class. Democrats have repeatedly stated that anyone within the borders of America must not be denied essential services or healthcare. This was true of the 2020 candidates of the Democratic Party. It was also true of Vice President Kamala Harris. Now it is true of Chuck Schumer. All of these politicians and or bureaucrats want you to pay for these illegals. This will buy their votes. Then they will outpopulate you and vote you out. There are presently 278.1 million people who are legally in the country. This does not include those immigrants who are here legally. That is a murky number because of a number of policies created by the Democrats. However, let us round it up to 300 million people. If we use the same numbers as a few moments ago, if it were not for these illegals taking the safety net that you and I paid for, we could have just over $300 extra in our checking accounts, or roughly $309.33 on average. So I ask, what could you do if you got the money back that the government stole from you? President Trump is likely contemplating that right now. Will we get stimulus checks? A stimulus check is perhaps the worst idea since the welfare state. This essentially amounts to universal basic income, or income based on the fact that you are alive. The economy is roaring back to life as people are spending more money. This is despite the fake news saying that tariffs would destroy the economy, even though this did not happen. The same pundits who have been wrong about every major issue over the last decade insisted that they were finally right this time. This hypothetical stimulus check that is coming in could instead go to paying down the national debt. If the Department of Government Efficiency or DOGE cuts are made, these two actions would lower how much interest we pay on the debt. This would in turn lower interest rates and people would be able to spend more money. This would free up more capital to pay it down further. Yes, that does sound fantastic. But the enemy can only win if we give up hope. But one part of not giving up hope is ensuring that we get the woke nonsense out. Generals held to a higher standard. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth has made some major changes to our armed forces. The first of which was getting all of the woke nonsense out of the military. There were people who were making military recruitment videos that focused on being an activist with two moms.
None of this makes sense.
Another major change was the fat generals. Before Secretary Hegseth got involved, all soldiers had to complete a physical fitness test twice a year, but some officers and generals were exempt. Now those same officers and generals have to complete them as well. I'm sure that the top brass having to do the same thing that the non-commissioned officers do knocks them off their high horses, but I do not care. I believe that if these officers have to do this, they might have a slice of humble pie and realize what their men still go through every day. Now, there are a lot of things that we need to do to strengthen the military, but there are also a lot of things that need to be done with law enforcement. As such, I take you to Chicago, where the police are derelict in their duty. Police abandon ICE, immigration and customs enforcement agents are under threat. Not just from the gangs and cartels that they are meant to deal with, but from the people that they are there to protect. Chicago police were told to stand down and not aid ICE agents, because standing as a unified front to stop criminals is a radical idea. It is in the wake of this that the National Guard troops were sent to Chicago. Now, President Trump cannot send in the National Guard to enforce laws within the city, especially with an activist judge standing in his way. Again, but protecting ICE agents from the terrorists, foreign and domestic, that may be legal. I am honestly not sure. But either way, it is difficult to trust the police sometimes. After all, the same type of officers who stand down in this instance would probably stand down when a Supreme Court justice is threatened. Another threat to Kavanaugh. Another attack was planned on Brett Kavanaugh. Fortunately, for all parties involved, this one was not incited by Chuck Schumer. Right now, he is too busy keeping the government closed. Not that I care. St. Matthew's Cathedral was holding mass for the Supreme Court when someone with potential fireworks was caught outside. In other words, this could have been another assassination attempt by a liberal who was radicalized by the Antifa organization. Despite having explosives so close to a federal official and by a church no less, this utter piece of scum was sentenced to a mere 8 years in prison. Liberals cannot debate ideas, and so they have to use force. However, we cannot give up on using ideas. Seamus makes a series. Seamus Coughlin of Freedom Tunes and Common Sense Soapbox is making his own full-length animated series. The donations, as of the writing of this episode, are still ongoing. The link for donations is in the description box below. The series is twisted plots and promises to combine his unique sense of humor with his own brand of political commentary. My general policy is to let the show air before giving it my endorsement. However, Mr. Coughlin has developed a good reputation, and so I will take him at his word. Be sure to donate to his campaign and tune in for the first episode when it is posted. One of the best things that happens from mocking liberals is that sometimes they actually face consequences for their actions. As such, let us check in with Letitia James. A corrupt attorney indicted, Letitia James spent her entire campaign bragging about how she was going to take down President Trump. She did not argue for bringing justice, but targeting a political opponent. In the end, all of her efforts were for naught, as President Trump walked away unscathed. He truly is the Teflon Don. However, that was not the end of her story. Now she is being indicted over mortgage fraud. She acted as a persecutor.
Don't you mean prosecutor? No!
For President Trump because he supposedly overvalued his property. A value that the bank signed off on, by the way. Now she is going to trial for virtually the same thing. Ladies and gentlemen, let us say with one voice.
Ironic.
Moving on. While that was amazing news, I want to end this video with something that no one ever thought would happen. Peace in the Middle East. Okay, that title was grandiose, but it is not that far from the truth. Diplomats, under the orders of President Trump, have gotten Israel and Hamas to agree to step one of peace negotiations. This includes freeing the prisoners, something that I did not think would ever happen, but it has. If President Trump can pull this off, this will be yet another peace negotiation under his belt. However, I am not going to celebrate too soon, especially when it comes to the terrorist cells that make up Hamas. Anything could happen. Furthermore, I suspect that they will plan another big attack within the decade. I am just curious to see if this will lead to the rebuilding of the temple. If so, the end of the world is nigh. Maybe I'm just blowing smoke. Maybe I'm completely off my rocker, but that is just my opinion. And do not forget to like, comment, and most importantly, subscribe for more. But before you go, on the left I have last week's video, but you may also enjoy the video on the right.